Hello, and welcome to Healthwatch. I'm your host, Carolyn Wilson from Ledge Light Health District. The goal of this program is to bring you information on a wide range of health topics and to introduce you to the people doing great work across the community. Today, I'm joined by Danielle Holmes, a sanitarian from Ledge Light Health District. We will be talking about environmental health and warmer weather public health topics. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carolyn.
So luckily, I have the good fortune of getting to work with you here at Ledge Light, but I want to give our viewers a chance to get to know you a little bit. Tell us about yourself and what brought you to Ledge Light Health District.
Sure. So when I was in college, I studied environmental science and policy. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in 2011. And I pictured myself working in a state park, possibly giving tours to little kids, maybe getting involved with TEP. But I had a little bit of a hard time at first finding a job in a related field. And one of the first positions that came up was for a sanitarian. What the heck is that? In the job description, it discussed water testing and soil testing. So this intrigued me, and I applied for that position, and I was given the job. That was in 2013, and I worked for that district for about 4 years until 2017, when I joined Ledge Light Health District.
Awesome. Well, that's a great story. It's funny how we sort of fall into these things.
Yeah, it was not exactly what I had pictured. And once I started learning all of the aspects of the job, I was quite surprised at the amount of different things that we are responsible for within the health code. There's a lot of ground that we cover and that we enforce and are responsible for. So that was very eye-opening. I really enjoy working for Ledge Light because I get to exercise more of my environmental background, where at my first district, I was concentrated a lot on food inspections. So I do a lot of land use activities, primarily land use activities at Ledge Light.
Awesome. That's great. So tell us, as a sanitarian, you've already touched on a couple of the things that a sanitarian might do. Tell us what a typical day might look like for you.
For me, a typical day involves a lot of field time. I look at plans. I do soil testing. Soil testing involves going to a site. It may be a residential site where there's already a home. It may be a site that's in the middle of the woods that has never been developed. Maybe it is one lot, might be a possible subdivision. But it really is designed to evaluate what the soil conditions are like on that property, to establish what it can support in terms of sewage disposal. And we would only do soil testing on the property. We don't remove any soils from these places. And the purpose is for on-site subsurface sewage disposal. So if there were sewers available, we would not be on these properties. So I do a lot of soil testing. I basically am just a big little kid. I never stopped playing in the dirt. I'm just taller now. So the soil testing is a big component. We also, once we have that data, we run perk tests. Perk is short for percolation. That helps us to evaluate how quickly the soils on site can absorb water and that factors into the overall design of a septic system. Once that is established, that data gets taken by a property owner, an engineer, a land surveyor, and then a plan is come up with. That plan gets submitted back to us. We review it. We decide, okay, this meets the code. You have successfully designed this septic system for what it is you're proposing to do, whether that's a commercial building, a private residence, a multifamily dwelling, a mixed-use building. And then we issue approvals and permits. When the permits are issued, then the installers, the licensed septic installers, start to call us for inspections. So inspections of septic systems are the bulk of what I do on a day-to-day basis. Soil testing, perk testing, inspections, and plan reviews, along with permit issuance, is a huge, huge part of my job. The other part is a lot of what we call B100A. B100A is short for the regulation 1913 B100A, and it applies to any building that is in existence on a septic system. So, for example, if you were to say, I really want a pool and I'm on a septic system, I'm going to go to my town hall in the building department and I'm going to apply for a building permit. As part of that process, you would have to go through B100A. The purpose of B100A is to make sure that your pool is not going to be on top of your system and that it meets a certain distance away from your septic area. The other part of B100A includes any type of manipulation or conversion that you may be doing to a building that would add more stress onto your septic system. So we review under B100A in conjunction with a building permit for a design flow increase to determine whether your septic system and the soils that are on site will support this conversion.
Wow. And you know what? I bet you that a lot of people are so surprised to hear that a health department deals with this kind of stuff, and that if you are going to be doing a pool or putting on a deck or something like that, you're going to have to probably call the health department first, especially if you have a septic system.
Yes, we often have people tell us, what the heck do you need to know about me replacing my deck? It's going to be the same size. It's going in the same place. But a lot of times we don't have records of that structure to begin with, and we may encounter that it's too close to the septic system. So it is rather interesting, and maybe most people don't consider that there is a separating distance. We also do a lot of work with wells. Anybody drilling a well, we have regulations that we enforce with regards to private well water.
Very interesting. And a lot of people probably don't even think about that. I know I'm on city water. Unless you have a well, you probably don't even think about it. So thank you so much for going into, that process and when you call Ledge Light, what's going on behind the scenes. So there's certainly a lot of work that you do. And I know you get a lot of calls and you're very busy with this. I would say that spring, summer is probably one of your busiest times.
Definitely. We used to have a slow time in the winter, although over the last 2 years with the coronavirus pandemic, we saw an increase in building, significant increase in the amount of additions. And, with people stuck at home, I think a couple things happened. I think, number one, the real estate market went absolutely crazy. So, buyer beware. All these people know, hey, I'm informed. I know there's a septic system. I want to have it inspected, or I want to have my water tested. And so, we saw a lot of that. We saw a lot of septic tank replacements. It almost became like a boilerplate item for a real estate transaction. If it had a septic tank, that thing was getting replaced before anybody was moving in. So I also think that with people at home, aside from the real estate world, they weren't traveling. So maybe they were, spending less money and they had a little bit more set aside to put into those home projects that they've been putting off for years and years. So we definitely saw an increase in our B100A reviews. And the other thing is that, again, people at home, they wanted to, in addition to them checking off the honey-do list, so to speak, they were stressing out their septic systems. They were running a lot more water. In normal times when you're in the office and everybody's, maybe at school or in a different area, all of that water use was now put on the home. So these systems, where maybe they were functioning perfectly fine, were now under a lot more stress and beginning to malfunction. So a lot of the septic repairs that we saw, I think, were related directly to the pandemic. There were other ripple effects to the pandemic that we saw as a health department and an enforcement standpoint. It was just incredible. And again, kind of back to real estate, the soil testing, my goodness, we hadn't had really much for subdivisions or, building boom previously. I mean, I used to have some downtime in the winter months, but nope, I was out there in the snow and, all the way through the year. So it was definitely significantly noticeable how much busier we were in every way.
Wow, that's so interesting. And, I always try to weave in the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on all the different topics we have here on Healthwatch. And I think it's really interesting. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, the different changes and how it's affected you as a sanitarian. So thank you so much for going into that. I think it's a good time for us to take a quick break. I hope everybody out there watching will join us right back here on Healthwatch.
STEM is the discipline of hard numbers, precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to get messy or just mess it up. Dare to program something internet-breaking, record-breaking. Dare to blow their minds. Dare to try. Dare to fail. Dare to keep daring. Dare to learn the difference between organic, sedimentary, and non-foliated metamorphic rock. Get outside, find those rocks. Dare to be homeroom famous, a high school fable. Dare to send those old STEM theories flying past the neighbor's house into outer space. And for the love of STEM, dare bigger. Dare to code, dare to invent, dare to explore, dare to STEM. Check out She Can STEM to get started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Healthwatch. Today, I am joined by Danielle Holmes, sanitarian at Ledge Light Health District. And we are talking about environmental health and some warmer weather public health topics that also go with that. So super excited to have Danielle with us. So before the break, Danielle, we were talking all about what it means to be a sanitarian. You shared with us what your day-to-day schedule looks like with mostly land use activities. As mentioned, the weather is getting a little bit warmer here. I just actually spent some time out today. I had an event, one of the first events in a while because of COVID, but this was a beautiful outdoor event. And I think I got a little sunburned actually. So that's my, as a health educator, one of my summer tips is to remember sunscreen.
I wear my SPF 30 every day.
That's good. That's great. I'll have to remind myself. So as the weather gets warmer, we are so fortunate to live in an area where there's lots of water, beaches, and people having fun in the sun. Tell us a little bit about our beach water program. What does Ledge Light do to keep people safe?
Sure. So beach water has got to be my favorite part about the job. I run the beach water program for Ledge Light Health District. We have 45 sample sites all across our district. Predominantly, they are marine. We do have 3 freshwater beaches, but we, from Memorial Day to Labor Day every year, we start to sample these beach areas. The locations are both public and private, and we sample once a week at a minimum. So what we're looking for is bacteria in the water, and the quality of the water for marine, we have a threshold of 104 bacterial colonies or greater of enterococcal bacteria. And in fresh water, it's 235 colonies or greater of E. coli bacteria. And so we draw a 125 milliliter sample once a week out of all 45 of our beaches. And then we submit those to the State Department of Public Health laboratory for testing. They do their testing. It takes a little bit longer to test marine water than it does fresh water. But what they do is they add a solution to the water sample, and that will result in a count of bacteria per that one. They measure it per 100 milliliters. So we give them a little bit over what they need to complete their sample. If they find that there is bacteria in that sample that exceeds what our thresholds are for fresh and marine water, respectively, they call me and they say, we have an elevated sample. Now, one of the drawbacks of a 100 milliliter sample is that it is very small in comparison to the shoreline area and the entirety of the beach. So given that it is a grab sample, meaning that at this with their hand, there is a potential for contamination that is not related to the water quality. So when we get this call, we immediately issue a swimming advisory, and we put signage up at the beach, and we draw a resample. On the resample, same process as the initial grab, send it to the lab, and then within a day, we have the results of that resample. If the resample is clear, then we would lift our swimming advisory. If it's not clear or not within acceptable limits, then we would either leave the swimming advisory or potentially close the beach. We do have to have 2 positive results in a row in order to warrant closure. We don't want to close a beach if we don't have to. So we do see contaminating events that happen that can cause bacteria in the water, especially when we get into the later summer months and we have tropical weather, storms, wind, lots of heavy rain. This is a direct result in high bacteria at beaches. And some towns actually preemptively will close a beach in anticipation of heavy rainfall. We have discussed internally. We don't have a triggering immediate closure without a high bacteria protocol at this point. But certainly it's within reason and very appropriate. We do know that heavy rainfall can directly affect the quality of the water.
Right. And boy, does that bum people out when it happens to be like right by a holiday, our Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day. Certainly, when we have to post those advisories or closures, it really certainly upsets some people. And I bet you get some interesting phone calls about that.
I do. One of the things I'll point out is that our regulations only allow us to be invited to sample a private beach or to sample a public beach that meets the definition. A beach within a state park is not in our jurisdiction. So I will often get phone calls when Rocky Neck closes, or vice versa, when there are beaches that are private that are near or next to Rocky Neck that are closed while Rocky Neck remains open. So one of the key points there is not only is it different jurisdiction, we do have the same protocol, but it just shows you how sensitive different areas can be, although they are so close together. And Rocky Neck has a very lengthy shoreline. So in comparison, again, with those grab samples, you may be right off of a jetty that has a much lower turnover than Rocky Neck does. And that's just an example. We have certain regulatory responses that we must make when we learn about bacteria in the water. And unfortunately, science has no timeline. It doesn't know what holidays are. We simply have to protect the public. And any bacteria in the water that does exceed the threshold can be dangerous, and especially for small children, as they tend to ingest water when they swim. So, we have unfortunately had times where it's 4th of July and, we've got a beach that's closed, and I've gotten some upset phone calls from people.
Sure.
Overwhelmingly, people appreciate and understand our job, and that ultimately we are doing what is necessary to protect their health. So, in that respect, you just try to remind them that, I get it, I understand. However, especially you have small children with you, this is the best possible, treatment, and would just have to be patient and allow the water to come in and flush itself out. It does take a little bit of time, but it's not usually closed forever. So.
Right. Good to remember that it's not going to be forever. Thank you for covering that. I'm sure everybody really just learned a lot about that and the process and why we do it the way we do it. Let's talk real quickly about a couple of other public health topics that are usually summer oriented. Mosquitoes. How can people be proactive about mosquito control?
Yes. Mosquitoes love stagnant water. That is what they need in order to complete their life cycle. So if you see standing water, if you have buckets that are outside, maybe you've got some leftover flower pots from last summer, anything that's retaining water in it, you want to go ahead and kick those over and dump those out. That's the best, maybe you left the wheelbarrow out and then it's April right now, so there's a lot of rain happening. Just don't let that water collect.
Good tip there. Now, another thing we like to do in the summertime is maybe go to some picnics or some outdoor get-togethers with people. What are your best tips for food safety for those events?
Sure. So not leaving your food out to bake in the sun is probably the most important tip. Food, as it warms up, it creates a more hospitable environment for bacteria to grow. So with the summer weather and the warmer months, you definitely want to keep in mind the temperature of the food and also the air. Time is a critical component as well. You have to be mindful of how long things have been out. Certainly you can set things out, but you don't really want them lingering for hours on end. I actually have seen they make these cute little nets now that you can cover your picnic items with, keep the flies away. Flies are a known vector of disease, and certainly something that when it lands on your picnic food, kind of makes you go, ooh, maybe I don't want to eat that now. So that's another method that you can use to protect it, is to make sure it's covered or provide a screen over it of some kind.
That's great. Yeah. Looking forward to some cookouts this summer for sure. You and I are both animal lovers. And, I know that with the pandemic, a lot of people perhaps have gotten behind on their rabies vaccinations for their pets, household pets maybe. And I know that we sometimes work with animal control on rabies cases. So real quick, for our viewers, what's the tip there? If they see an animal outside during the day, should they be concerned, or, what do you have to say about that?
Animals are, right now, they're going through their mating. So it may not be necessarily alarming to see animals out in the daytime right now that you normally wouldn't otherwise. So I would caution people, don't approach them, don't feed them. There's, of course, always that chance of rabies. So as far as your pets go, make sure you do get them to the vet, get them boosted on their rabies vax, and just try and not come in contact with wild animals. Definitely do not feed them, do not touch them. If their behavior seems to be funny, that may be a time to call animal control. We do work closely with animal control, who will at times take these animals out of situations. For example, if a bat winds up in your bedroom and you're sleeping and it may have come in contact with you, or the saliva has in some way touched you, or you're unaware, then that would be a time that the animal control would be appropriate to get involved and potentially capture the animal. In some situations, there have been aggressive behavior. In that case, we will take the animal from animal control and submit it up to our friends at the state lab to get testing for rabies. In the event that a wild animal does test positive for rabies, Ledge Light will issue a press release to our residents with the type of animal that it was positive for rabies, and where it was found.
Thank you so much for going over that. Very important reminder to us all on that. And thank you so much for joining us today, Danielle. That's all the time we have for today. Such a pleasure to be able to talk with you. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, and to our viewers, thank you so much for joining us here on Healthwatch. And we hope you'll join us again next time here on Healthwatch.